What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of the JT Sports Podcast. I'm your host, JT. Hope that y'all are having a great Tuesday. I want to lead this episode off discussing the 49ers Super Bowl window. As we already know, Brock Purdy and San Fran are at the negotiating table, and there's this belief that once Brock Purdy gets paid, it's going to cripple the 49ers to the point where it's going to close their Super Bowl window shut. But I feel differently. I think that the 49ers Super Bowl window, even after they pay Brock Purdy, is going to be wide open, and they have just as good as a chance as anybody else in the NFC to win it all this upcoming season. The Browns, a few weeks ago, it looked like they were going to take Shedeur Sanders, then it changed to Abdul Carter, and now it looks as if they're leaning towards taking Travis Hunter second overall. I'm going to discuss what drafting Travis would mean for the Browns in terms of their plans at quarterback. The Bears, with the hiring of Ben Johnson and the moves that they've made so far this offseason, I expect them to go from worst to first in the NFC North. What are the Panthers going to do with the 8th overall pick? They're in a little bit of a conundrum. And then we'll dive into the problems that are hurting the Miami Dolphins and Lamar Jackson. I'm ready to come out and say he is pound for pound the most talented quarterback to ever play the game of football. Before we dive into it, if you have any questions that you would like answered, NFL, college football, send them in the DMs on Instagram at JTSports_, and on X at JTSports__. We want to hear from you. We want to answer your questions when we do our mailbag episode on Friday. So go ahead, follow us on Instagram and on X at JTSports_, at JTSports__. Like, subscribe, turn on post notifications if you're new, and let's dive into it. Nobody's denying that last season was a major disappointment for San Francisco. Now you're in line to have to pay Brock Purdy, who for the last couple of years has been one of the biggest bargains at the quarterback position. And I don't agree with the sentiment that after the 49ers pay Brock Purdy, it's going to cripple them to the point where their Super Bowl window is going to be closed shut. One thing about San Francisco that gives me a lot of confidence they still are going to be able to compete for a Super Bowl after paying Brock Purdy is, for one, they've drafted incredibly well. Isaac Guerendo last season didn't really know too much about this guy during the draft process, and yet when Jordan Mason went down, Chris McCaffrey went down, he stepped up and he was really good. You also got rookie Pearsall, who showed a little bit of promise during his rookie season. And if he never got shot, who knows how good he could have been in year one if he didn't have to miss that time. Renardo Green was pretty good as a rookie as well. And also, the defense is going to be back to playing at an elite level. You bring back Robert Saleh, who 49ers fans have been having their fingers crossed for the last couple of years that he would be able to return back to the Bay Area. And a huge issue that hindered the 49ers making it to the playoffs last year, outside of injuries and inefficiency on offense, was you didn't have the defense playing at the level that we've been accustomed to seeing this unit play at for so many years. Robert Saleh, when he got fired by the Jets, that defense went from being top 10 in the league to one of the worst in the league very quickly. It's not like he's going to be learning the ropes all over again. They have had a lot of great players on that side of the football, and they still do. When Nick Bosa is fully healthy, he's still one of the best pass rushers in the league. And last year, when he wasn't on the field, you saw how different that 49ers defense looked. But with him coming back, bringing back Robert Saleh, it's guaranteed that the 49ers are at least going to have a top 10 defense, and that's going to be the bare minimum. Why is it safe to assume that? Well, look at Robert Saleh's track record, and look what the 49ers have done these last couple of years when they have got it right when it comes to their defensive coordinator hires. You get a healthy Chris McCaffrey back. I'm expecting CMC to revert back to the form that we saw when the 49ers went to the Super Bowl against Kansas City, and Christian McCaffrey was arguably the best offensive player in the league during that year. I felt when Christian McCaffrey got on the cover of Madden, it was a pretty sure thing that he was going to get injured. You already have one of the most injury-prone players ever, and then you put him on Madden, and then he risked getting the Madden curse. Of course, Christian McCaffrey was due to have an injury-riddled season, but now he's coming back healthy. You missing the playoffs actually is a good thing. You probably weren't going to go that far to begin with, and if you would have made it to the postseason, Christian McCaffrey probably would have rushed himself back from injury, and he probably could have re-aggravated the injury that had to sideline him for the rest of the year. We know CMC is still one of the most talented running backs in the league. And when you have somebody that is pretty much a Hall of Fame level talent, not saying Christian McCaffrey is going to make it to the Hall of Fame, but we can't say that he's a Hall of Fame level talent. You can be a Hall of Fame level talent and still not be in the Hall of Fame. When he gets back to what he was in 2022, 2023, the 49ers offense is going to be back humming again. What makes this offense work is not all of the weapons that they have at receiver, even though they do have Juwan Jennings, Ricky Pearsall, and Brandon Ayuk is coming off the injury. I still think he'll be a B-, B-tier receiver. But this offense hums when Christian McCaffrey is rolling. And the 49ers, they know that they have to get that offensive line improved. It looks like they are prioritizing investing all of their draft capital into improving the trenches, the line of scrimmage, not just on the offensive line, but on the defensive line as well, which also was a unit that hurt them. There's more reasons to be optimistic about the 49ers Super Bowl window still being open than there are to be pessimistic. Another thing is that every time Kyle Shanahan has had a down season, he's always bounced back with a great season in return. And 2024 was more so of a reality check for Kyle Shanahan. After last season concluded, he realized that he had to make changes, not just from a personnel standpoint, but from a philosophical standpoint. We know how much he loved Deebo Samuel. There's a reason why the 49ers were hesitant to trade him, even though they probably should have traded him a long time ago. He was such a focal point of that offense. For the 49ers to move on from him and a couple of other key veterans that they've ran it with for so long, it's a sign that there are changes that are being made, or from a front office standpoint to a coaching standpoint, to where they're not about to make the same mistake twice. You paid Brandon Ayuk, you tried to trade him. Nobody is going to take him coming off MCL tear and all of the other injuries that came with it. So you're stuck with them. But it's not as if the brother is just going to completely become a jabroni. He's going to become a bum. When he missed all of training camp and the majority of the offseason due to those contract negotiations, it was expected that it was going to be a little bit of a slow start to the season for him. But you don't get rid of a guy like Brandon Ayuk, who has still shown the ability to be a productive wide receiver for you inside of your offense. A guy like Deebo had to go due to his skill set just not being good enough for the 49ers to solely rely on him when you are struggling to get open, you're struggling with drops, you're just mildly inconsistent. It was time to move on from Deebo. And trading Deebo Samuel is a sign that Kyle Shanahan, philosophically, he's about to change his offense somewhat. The red zone was a huge area that held this team back as well, where the year prior they had one of the best red zone offenses in the league. The 49ers have just as good as a chance as anybody else in the NFC to still make it to the Super Bowl. Everybody in this conference is overgoing some major changes. The Detroit Lions have to overcome losing two key coordinators. They lose their offensive coordinator and their defensive coordinator to head coaching jobs. Are they still going to be as good without those guys as what they were when they had them? We don't know. The Minnesota Vikings, how good are they going to be with J.J. McCarthy? Is there going to be a drop-off moving on from Sam Darnold. There are a lot of teams in the NFC that are presumed to be Super Bowl favorites or have better odds to win it all than the 49ers, who have just as many questions as what San Francisco has. San Francisco has been one of the more consistent teams when it comes to consistently being in the Super Bowl conversation for over the last 4 to 5 years. They've been to 2 Super Bowls, and if they would have played anybody but Patrick Mahomes, they probably would have walked away with at least one of those. I'm confident the 49ers still have an opportunity to win a Super Bowl, and I feel like the whole Super Bowl window thing is overrated anyway, because you really don't know when a team still has a chance to win it all and when they don't. We've seen teams like the Cincinnati Bengals of all franchises make random Super Bowl runs. So there really isn't such a thing as a Super Bowl window. It's just a little bit random. More teams have a better shot at winning the Super Bowl this upcoming season than what you may think, and the 49ers are definitely one of them. And I believe in Brock Purdy. Brock Purdy, although he may not be one of the most talented quarterbacks in the league, what gets overlooked about him is that he's one of the most consistent performers in big games. He has won in the playoffs. He has led the 49ers to the Super Bowl. It's not a Jimmy Garoppolo situation. They are asking Brock Purdy to throw the football a lot more than what they ever asked Jimmy Garoppolo to do. They trust Brock Purdy more late in games than what they ever trusted Jimmy G. It's right to pay Brock Purdy. He's a top 10 quarterback. No matter if you have to make him a guy who gets paid $50, $55 million a year, and he becomes top 5 highest paid at his position, it's hard to find quarterbacks who consistently win in the postseason. You don't go from being Mr. Irrelevant to leading a team in the Super Bowl if there wasn't something special about you. What makes Brock Purdy special is that he's a gamer. He throws with great anticipation. He gets the ball out fast. He also has a good amount of mobility as well. He is the perfect quarterback for Kyle Shanahan's offense. You don't have to get a Lamar Jackson, a Josh Allen, or Patrick Mahomes kind of talent to win a Super Bowl. Jalen Hurts isn't considered one of the most talented quarterbacks in the league. Most people consider him to be a really good game manager, and he just led the Eagles to the Super Bowl. If Jalen Hurts can win a Super Bowl, if guys like Joe Flacco can win a Super Bowl, so can Brock Purdy. The 49ers Super Bowl window is not closed. It's still wide open. Every day now, it seems like the Cleveland Browns are flip-flopping with who they're going to take second overall. At first, it looked like they were going to take Shador. Then it was out there they were going to take Abdul Carter. Now, signs are pointing towards Cleveland taking Travis Hunter second overall. And if they take Travis Hunter, how are they going to use him? Is he going to play both sides? Is he going to be a receiver? Is he going to play corner? The Browns are a team, to me, that seems more than willing to let Travis Hunter play both ways. They definitely do need another wide receiver to pair alongside of Cedric Tillman and Jerry Jeudy. And you could also use a little bit of help at cornerback. Travis Hunter is too gifted of a player to not allow him to play both ways. How are you going to divvy up the snaps between him playing offense and defense? That's going to be TBD, but I'd rather see Travis Hunter play wide receiver because he has a bigger impact on the Browns winning games than what he would playing corner. You can be a shutdown corner and still be on the trash team. But if you are an elite receiver and you have the ability to score touchdowns, you impact the game in a bigger way than what you would playing corner. But if Travis has to play corner and he has to guard up against somebody like a George Pickens or Zay Flowers for a few possessions, he definitely can do so. Now, if the Browns take Travis Hunter, who's going to be throwing him the football? It definitely isn't going to be Kenny Pickett, or if anything, he definitely is going to be in competition for the starting quarterback job. I still believe Kirk Cousins is very well in play for the Cleveland Browns. Him and Kevin Stefanski already have some history together. Remember, before Kevin Stefanski was the head coach of the Browns, he was the offensive coordinator for the Minnesota Vikings. And Kirk Cousins had a lot of success when Kevin Stefanski was his play caller. The Falcons right now still are not willing to trade Kirk Cousins due to the cap hit that they're going to take if they were to trade him. And if Kirk Cousins wants the opportunity to start again, he more than likely is going to have to restructure his contract, which I feel is probably going to happen sooner rather than later. And let's say that you don't take Kirk Cousins, then you're most likely 99.9% going to end up drafting a quarterback. Are you going to trade back into the first round? Maybe you get into the late 20s and you trade back up to get a guy like a Jackson Dart. I wouldn't mind the Cleveland Browns rolling the dice on somebody like Jackson Dart. Kevin Stefanski is an offensive-minded coach. It didn't work with Deshaun Watson, but Baker Mayfield did have a pretty good stretch under him. And Jackson Dart going to an offensive-minded coach with the weapons that the Browns will have at that point, Travis Hunter, Cedric Tillman, Jerry Jeudy, their offensive line being fully healthy. It's a good situation for him to maybe end up, sitting behind Kenny Pickett for a few weeks. When Kenny Pickett flames out, he could come in and maybe salvage the season for the Browns. But if you don't go Jackson Dart in the first round, then round 2 and after, you're looking at maybe taking a flyer on Jalen Milroe. But if you draft Jalen Milroe, I expect you to already have Kirk Cousins on the roster. Jackson Dart, he's not a quarterback prospect that I'm extremely high on, but there are some really good traits that he has. Really good arm. He's a pretty decent athlete, and when he's in rhythm, he's pretty good. He also has the capability to start for you at some point during the season. But if you draft Jalen Milroe or Quinn Ewers, these are more of long-term development guys. Somebody that you will want to sit behind Kirk Cousins for a year or two, let him grow, let him continue to learn the system. Jackson Dart is more suited to start right away with the years of experience he has, being a multi-year starter at Ole Miss, having multiple years of productive quarterback play. Jalen Milroe, with what we saw from him last year, just with the inconsistencies that he has had throwing the football, he has a really good chance of being the second coming of Anthony Richardson, more than him becoming the next coming of Jaden Daniels or Lamar Jackson. Quinn Ewers gives me more of backup quarterback vibes. He just is a really streaky player. He has a really good arm. He has the ability to throw from different arm angles, but it just doesn't seem like a good fit in Cleveland if the Browns are looking for somebody who gives them a chance to win this year. Drafting Travis Hunter isn't the worst move in the world if Kevin Stefanski knows that he's going to be around for at least one more season. So if it doesn't work and you aren't that good again this year, you got a chance of picking from a way better quarterback class in 2026. I don't think Kevin Stefanski should get fired. If anything, he should have a lifelong contract as the head coach of the Browns. It's extremely hard to win in this division with Mike Tomlin, John Harbaugh normally being a lock to win 9-10 games, especially when you're going up against Lamar twice a season, and you also got to see Joe Burrow as well. Longevity and stability is key to being able to have success in the AFC North, which is why the Browns don't really have a pressing need to address quarterback in the first round unless Kevin Stefanski's job was really on the line. I do feel he has a good amount of security, which is why there isn't really a lot of pressure for the Browns to have to draft a quarterback. And you don't want to reach for a quarterback in what's considered to be one of the weakest quarterback classes in recent memory. You rather go best player available with Travis Hunter, a guy that you know is going to give you all-pro kind of play, versus rolling the dice on somebody like Shedeur Sanders, who, although I'm high on him, I don't know if the Browns are the ideal situation for him to have a successful career. I'd much rather see them run it with a vet or take Travis Hunter and then draft a quarterback either late in the first round or get somebody in round 2 or 3 who can be developed. Either way, drafting best player available is never a bad strategy if you are a head coach that right now you're just looking for good players, and you can never have too many good players, and that's what you'll be getting drafting Travis second overall. I'm a huge believer in Ben Johnson as the new head coach of the Chicago Bears. I expect him to get Caleb Williams playing up to the level we expected him to play at when he was labeled as this generational prospect, the second coming of Patrick Mahomes out of last year's draft. And when Ben Johnson gets Caleb Williams playing at his full potential, it's going to be downright scary because think about this. Caleb Williams, if Ben Johnson maximizes his potential, probably ends up being a top 3, top 5 quarterback in the league. And at that point, you essentially have the best quarterback in the NFC, either between him or Jaden Daniels. The NFC isn't loaded with a bunch of elite quarterbacks. In terms of physical traits, you don't really have too many. You have like your Jared Goffs, your Brock Purdy's, your Dak Prescott's, the quarterbacks that do have a lot of good physical traits like Jordan Love. He's a little bit inconsistent. Caleb Williams, though, he has the ability to be up there with Jaden Daniels. And when Washington was getting elite QB play out of Jaden Daniels, we saw how hard that team was to beat. Imagine what the Bears are going to be this year when Caleb Williams gets way better coaching out of a guy in Ben Johnson that's perceived to be the second coming of Sean McVay, Kyle Shanahan. He's supposed to be this generational offensive mind. And if he lives up to that label, with Caleb Williams having an improved offensive line, you trade for Joe Thuney, you sign center Joe Dalman in free agency, you'll probably end up taking another offensive lineman in the draft. You got good receivers. You're going to be straight at running back. The defense is also stacked. This is a complete football team. The Bears easily are a candidate to go from worst to first in the NFC North this year. Look at everything that's going on with the other 3 franchises in this division. The Detroit Lions are losing 2 great coordinators to head coaching jobs. Ben Johnson has an inside track on that operation, what they like to do. So that's going to give the Bears somewhat of an advantage when they go up against the Detroit Lions. The Minnesota Vikings, we could see them take a step back. J.J. McCarthy is an unproven commodity. We don't know if he's going to be a bust or if he's going to be better or if not slightly better than what Sam Darnold was. We don't really know what's going to happen with Minnesota due to the questions that they have at quarterback surrounding JJ. And what about the Green Bay Packers? They aren't as talented as the Chicago Bears, and they have had their number over the last couple of decades, but history doesn't win football games. You can make the argument that the team the Bears are bringing in this upcoming season is the best team that they've had in a very long time, probably since they lost in the NFC Championship in 2010 to the Green Bay Packers. They are stacked on both sides of the football. Your offense is going to be really good. Your defense was already really good with Matt Eberflus. You replace him with Dennis Allen being your defensive coordinator. There wasn't too many better options that you could have gotten that defensive coordinator to make sure that your defense was still going to play at a top 10 level. Dennis Allen isn't a good head coach, but he has proven that he's a doggone good defensive coordinator. You got a great secondary. Jalen Johnson, Jaquan Brisker, Tyreek Stevenson. Your defensive line is even more legit with the signing of Grady Jarrett. He's not what he used to be, but pairing him up with Montez Sweat, that's going to be really nasty. I love what the Bears have done this offseason up to this point. And every year, there's a team that goes from either worst to first in their division, or they go from being one of the worst teams in their division to being a playoff team. Last year, around this time, it was perceived the Bears were going to be a playoff team with them drafting Caleb Williams and us thinking that he was walking into one of the best situations ever for a rookie quarterback. That didn't play out. And it wasn't all due to Caleb Williams. I felt he had a pretty good rookie season. It was more so due to poor coaching. If you were a better coach team, you never would have lost to the Washington Commanders. You wouldn't have had that hiccup on Thanksgiving with Matt Eberflus forgetting to call timeouts. The Bears were a good coach away from being in the postseason last year. Now you correct that issue by bringing in Ben Johnson, who has already improved your biggest Achilles heel from last season, and beefing up the offensive line. He's going to get Caleb Williams right. And when Caleb Williams ends up playing at that top 5 level, you'll probably get somebody who's going to be a Pro Bowler, probably an MVP candidate as well. There has never been a better time to be drinking the Chicago Bears Kool-Aid than now. The Carolina Panthers are in a sticky situation with the 8th overall pick in the 2025 NFL Draft. With this not being an insanely loaded draft class in terms of being able to find high-end players, there probably are only about 5 or 6 players that you know are going to be guaranteed studs. With the Panthers picking at 8, there's a good chance that you might not find an instant impact player. And their biggest need right now is defense. Is there an edge rusher worth taking at 8? I don't really know about Jalen Walker being the right pick that high. I like him a lot, but I don't necessarily think he's a top 10 worthy pick. The Bears, with them being heavily interested in the Ashton Jeanty, maybe they're willing to trade up and you can get a few more assets trading back a little bit with them, or maybe the Dallas Cowboys want to move up for Ted McMillan. Going offense isn't out of the realm of possibility for Carolina neither. If you trade down, it's probably going to be because you're going to target the edge rusher. You can get Mike Green out of Marshall. If you fall a little bit out of the top 10, you get a guy like a Donovan Izaraku or James Pierce Jr. And if, let's say, you trade up or trade down with a team like the Steelers who want to draft Shador if he falls, or the Broncos, maybe they want to scoop up Tyler Warren. If you get into the 20 range, maybe you go after a defensive tackle like a Walter Nolan and you pair him up with Derek Brown. Walter Nolan isn't that good against the run, but he's a really good pass rusher. Now, if the Panthers want to go offense, that wouldn't be a bad move neither. Yes, they do have a bunch of holes on defense, but there's only so many holes the Carolina Panthers are going to address on defense in the draft. You're not going to find 4 or 5 defensive players out of this draft that are going to come in right away and immediately improve that defense. So either way, no matter if you go defense in the first round or if you go offense in the first round, you still are going to need a lot more pieces to improve that side of the ball. And there aren't a lot of instant impact defensive players that are going to be left at 8. At that point, when you're on the board, you're hoping that Will Johnson is still available. Will Johnson is one of the few blue chip prospects available in this draft class. If you draft him, you're going to have one of the best cornerback duos in the league between him and J.C. Horn. But if Will Johnson isn't on the board, I don't really believe Jalen Walker is worth the risk. You're better off trading out of the top 10, trading down, getting a few more assets, and getting one of those edge rushers like a Izaraku or a Mike Green. And this is a pretty good edge class. I like Josiah Stewart out of Michigan a lot. I wouldn't be opposed to Carolina going offense 8th overall. As I mentioned, this is a weak draft class. These defensive players, there's no guarantee that they're going to help you improve that area of the ball. A guy like a Tyler Warren, yes, you do have Jatavian Sanders who you drafted, but he kind of looks like he could be another coming of Brock Bowers. You can line him up at so many different positions, and Bryce Young is your franchise quarterback. The priority should be building around Bryce. You can pass on a defensive prospect at 8 because there isn't really none at this point. Unless Mason Graham or Will Johnson are on the board at 8, I don't really think there's a can't-miss prospect that the Panthers have to draft at 8. There's this large consensus of Panthers fans that like to yell at you and say, the defense was so bad last year, JT. We gotta go defense. We can't ignore the defense no more. Okay, you can draft the bust 8th overall by reaching for guys that aren't worth a top 10 investment. The goal is to find players who can come in and produce. So if you get a guy in Tyler Warren or Tech McMillan at 8, and they end up becoming Pro Bowl caliber players, Who cares about the defense at that point? Because you could take a Jalen Walker and he ends up being a bust, while guys like Tyler Warren and Ted McMillan end up being Pro Bowl caliber players. Building around Bryce Young isn't as crazy as what it seems. This is their franchise quarterback, and you should do everything possible to make sure that you give him as much weapons as what you can humanly give him to increase his chances of having a great third season in the league. This is a pivotal year for Bryce Young. This is make or break. We still don't know what Bryce Young is up to this point. He looked terrible for his first year in the league, and he looked terrible his first few starts of last season. And then after he had that conversation with Rod Wave, something just clicked. Were we fooled by Bryce Young's second half stretch? Or is he actually going to be able to carry that momentum into his third season? We don't know, but getting him another playmaker like Tyler Warren and Tech McMillan does nothing but help his chances. You can still get a guy like Josiah Stewart and other impact level players on defense later on in the draft. The chances you have of finding an impact player if you're the Carolina Panthers at 8th on defense is the same chance you have of finding one in the later rounds of the draft. Once you get past the 7th pick, it's a crapshoot at that point. There's no guarantee that any of these defensive players that you could be eyeballing is going to be a proven thing, and they're going to give you instant production on defense to majorly improve that side of the ball. And if anything, it probably would be in the Panthers' best interest if you really are looking for a guy who can come in and help improve your defense. Why not take the 8th overall pick and use it to package in a trade for a proven star player? Now, I don't know what star players on defense are on the trade block right now, but if you got a chance to get a edge rusher that's pretty good or a cornerback that's pretty good, why not use that 8th overall pick instead of using it on an unproven draft prospect where you don't know how their career is going to play out? Use that to trade for a proven veteran. There's a lot out there. There definitely are some guys on the trading block that the Panthers definitely could be in the running for with that 8th overall selection. It's just, when I talk to Carolina Panthers fans about what they should do 8th overall, it's just this large group of y'all who just scream, we got to go defense. And that's understandable. But there's not really a huge basket of elite defensive prospects in this draft class that really are worth being taken 8th overall. Unless you get Will Johnson or Mason Graham, those are really the only surefire defensive prospects that you know are going to help improve that area of the football. And you're still going to have way more holes on that side of the ball anyway. As I said, the chances of you having the opportunity to draft an impact player 8th overall, it's the same chances you have of finding one later on in the draft. You can find good corners in round 2. You can find good pass rushers in the middle portions of the round. Tell me where Max Crosby was drafted. He was a mid-round selection. You can still strike gold without overdrafting and reaching for guys just for the sake of trying to fill holes on defense. Overreaching or overdrafting guys isn't going to help improve your defense if these guys don't have the ability to play. The first 2 years of Mike McDaniel's tenure in Miami looked really promising. He went to the postseason on both occasions, but ever since then, it looks like the honeymoon phase has kind of worn off with Mike McDaniel, and we're starting to see a huge problem with why the Dolphins are teetering towards reverting back to being one of the worst teams in the NFL. They got a soft culture. Mike McDaniel, when you look at him, he looks like a nerd. He's super friendly with the players, and it's easy to see why he's had issues with getting some of his star players to show up to practice and meetings all the time. They don't respect them. And when you have a team that doesn't respect their head coach, how can you expect to win? It's one team, one goal. Everybody has to be perfectly aligned. And when Vic Fangio left the Miami Dolphins to take the Philadelphia Eagles defensive coordinator job, And Dolphins players said that they hated Vic Fangio. They didn't want to get Coach Hart, pretty much, essentially, is what it was. It was a pretty tall tale sign that this team was not going to be a playoff football team. When you have a defensive coordinator that has the reputation and the prestige that Vic Fangio has, and players can't take tough coaching from him, it pretty much proves the soft culture that the Dolphins have with Mike McDaniel. And that's why the Dolphins are a great team in the first 2 months of the season. They dominate September and October, but once you get to the second half of the year, after the week of Thanksgiving, when the real football season begins, you have to go on the road and win cold weather games against the Green Bay Packers and Lambeau Field. You got to travel to Arrowhead to win a playoff game there. The Dolphins oftentimes get bullied. They are a finesse football team. They remind me of what those early 2010s Oregon teams used to look like with Chip Kelly. They got a lot of speed. They want to beat you with finesse, but once you get to the second half of the season and you got to be able to run the football, you got to be able to prove your dominance up front, the Dolphins are not able to do that. And they end up getting exposed for having weak offensive line play. They've neglected the offensive line for so many years, and we wonder why Tua continues to struggle to stay healthy. And Mike McDaniel is 3-14 against teams with winning records since becoming the head coach of the Dolphins. Why is that? Oftentimes because when you go up against these good teams, you are outmatched on the line of scrimmage. When you play against the Buffalo Bills, you're outmatched on the line of scrimmage. You just don't have the ability to hold up front to give Tua time to throw the football. Teams have now caught on to Mike McDaniel's scheme. They know that he wants to get the football out fast. They know that Tua Tagovailoa, he's a little bit timid when you get a little bit of pressure on him. And they know with the Dolphins' inability to improve the offensive line that when you make this a one-dimensional football team, they don't have the ability to spam Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle open on those deep bombs or on those crossing routes, sending them in motion. You have a very easy team to beat. And Tua, I don't view him as the issue with the Dolphins. I don't have a problem with the Dolphins paying Tua what they gave him. We already know what the quarterback market is. Tua's a top 10 quarterback when he's healthy. When he wasn't on the field last year, when he had to miss those few games with that concussion, the Dolphins were pretty much unwatchable. And if he was healthy, they probably end up winning a few of those games, and they probably would have ended up being in the playoffs. When Tua is healthy, he's a winning quarterback. Now, is he a Super Bowl winning quarterback? I don't know. But you definitely can find a lot worse quarterbacks than Tua. My biggest fear with Tua is that the Dolphins gave a lot of money to Chad Pennington 2.0. When Chad Pennington was healthy, he was one of the better quarterbacks in the league, but that's the issue with Chad Pennington. He very seldom was healthy, and that's why, the Dolphins are in a predicament that they're in right now with Tua, where you invested so much into a player that's really good, but he's injury prone, and he's one knockout hit away from probably having to retire and never being able to play football again. The Dolphins are in a really bad situation right now because Mike McDaniel has allowed the Dolphins to be okay with having this soft culture. He's too friendly, and that's why these players don't respect him. When you're coming to meetings late and finding guys isn't enough, they still continue to come late, that's just a middle finger to you as a coach. Jim Harbaugh wouldn't allow that to happen. I'm pretty sure Kyle Shanahan wouldn't allow that to happen. Mike Tomlin, as prayer-friendly as a head coach as he is, he's not allowing that to happen. Bad organizations allow this to happen. And that's what the Miami Dolphins are reverting back to. They had a good stretch for the last 3-4 years. They were a 9-10 win team. They were a playoff or borderline playoff team. But it looks like those days are quickly over. As fast as it happened, as fast as it ended. And the Dolphins aren't struggling for a lack of talent per se. They do have talent. They are a pretty talented team. They just lack talent at one of the most important places needed to be a good football team, and that's on the line of scrimmage. You just lost one of the best left tackles to retirement. How are you going to be able to replace him? Is Patrick Paul going to be able to be a suitable replacement for him at left tackle? Did the Dolphins get it right drafting Patrick Paul? Because this organization, when they have invested draft capital into the offensive line, they haven't gotten it right. Austin Jackson is still a projected starter for this team, although he's been one of the worst at his position, and he's a bona fide bust at this point. I don't have confidence that the Dolphins are going to be able to correct their issues through the draft. It's going to come down to, can they improve the culture? Can they go from being a soft team to being a team that late in the season, we can run the football against you? We're not just this finesse team that has to throw the football with this air raid kind of philosophy. We can run the football 30, 40 times down your throat if need be. It's funny how Mike McDaniel comes from the Kyle Shanahan coaching tree, when Kyle Shanahan is known for running the football, often being 2 times overly committed to the run. Why is it that Mike McDaniel doesn't have that same philosophy? Maybe it's because Kyle Shanahan, what got the 49ers in trouble last year was that he wanted to overcompensate for not having good offensive linemen with his scheme. And sometimes your scheme, as good as what it is, can only elevate guys to a certain point. Mike McDaniel has to realize that, okay, even though I do have a good scheme, imagine how good we could be if we had even better players. If you take a good offensive guard and you put him in Mike McDaniel's scheme, he goes from good to great. Same thing with Kyle Shanahan. The same issues that kind of plagued the 49ers last year kind of hurt Miami in a sense. Because Mike McDaniel and Kyle Shanahan, they somewhat are a little bit similar. The only difference is that the 49ers are a more physical team than what the Dolphins are. And I know it's really repetitive saying this. You Dolphins fans probably have heard this so many times through over the last couple of years, you being a soft team, but it's more so you having a soft culture. And your players don't respect your coach. And that's what's wrong with the Dolphins right now. They just are Charmin ultra soft right now. And until they can get some toughness, until they can get buy-in from their best players, and it becomes one team, one goal, not a bunch of mercenaries. That's what the Miami Dolphins are. They're not a team. They're just a bunch of individuals, a bunch of big personalities that only care about themselves, and they don't care about the team. Because if they did, you wouldn't have to worry about guys continually showing up to meetings late, finding them and it not working. The Dolphins have a soft culture. And that's why this franchise is reverting back to being poverty again. I feel like Lamar Jackson is pound for pound the most talented quarterback that ever played the game of football. Championships doesn't define how talented a player is. Michael Jordan and LeBron James are often debated as being the GOAT, despite not having more rings than Bill Russell. Lamar, from a talent standpoint, is the closest thing to God if he was playing football. He pretty much is unstoppable. There is not a single thing that Lamar Jackson can't do. He's the equivalent to creating a quarterback on Madden and giving him 99 overall everything. 99 speed, 99 accuracy, 99 throw power. Lamar is just an unstoppable player. And he has evolutionized the quarterback position. Think about how many teams have tried to find the next Lamar Jackson ever since the Ravens drafted him in 2018. Think about the quarterbacks that have come into the league like Anthony Richardson, Jaden Daniels, who have been considered to be somewhat in that Lamar Jackson kind of tier. They're freak athletes, but they need a little bit of polish throwing the football. Lamar is the ultimate unicorn. We will never see another player with this kind of skill set, with this kind of talent, ever play in the league again. Lamar shouldn't be compared to Michael Vick. Comparing Lamar Jackson to Michael Vick is an insult because Lamar is in a different stratosphere than what Michael Vick ever was. And I don't say that to be disrespectful to Michael Vick, but Lamar had over 40 touchdowns this past season and under 5 interceptions. This is Aaron Rodgers on crack. That's what Lamar is. He should have won MVP last year. It should have been his third MVP award. Lamar could retire right now and have a first ballot ticket to Canton, Ohio. He already is one of the greatest quarterbacks that ever played this game from a sheer talent standpoint. He broke the career record for total rushing yards for a quarterback, and he's not even in year 10 yet. Lamar, when you think he's reached his ceiling, when you think he's maxed out his potential, he only continues to get better. The running back jokes, you don't even see them no more. Why? Because Lamar Jackson every single season continues to prove why he is one of one. You're never going to find another Lamar. Jaden Daniels is more Marcus Mariota than he is Lamar Jackson. Lamar barely gets touched. Lamar only gets touched when he's either getting sacked or when he chooses to try to get extra yards after contact when he's running with the football. This is one of the scariest players in the history of this game. When you listen to players describe what it's like playing Lamar Jackson, it's like a blur. When you see Lamar Jackson coming at you full speed, you don't know what the hell to do when you see somebody coming at you that's running pretty much 4-2 with all kinds of different moves in this arsenal to embarrass you in the open field. Mike Vrabel a few days ago said, why should we ban the tush push just because other teams are having a hard time stopping it? If that's the case, we should just go ahead and ban Lamar Jackson from running the football because when he runs it, he's damn near unstoppable. And Lamar Jackson, when you watch him play, it's like you're watching somebody play Madden in a sense. In third down situations, Lamar is a headache for opposing defenses because you got everybody covered. Everybody is locked down, and Lamar Jackson picks up the first down with his legs. You take away all of the run lanes, and he ends up finding somebody open in the passing game. This is what you expect somebody like Lamar Jackson's skill set at their full potential to be. I don't even know if Lamar Jackson has even maxed out at this point. When you think he's reached his full potential, he does nothing but surprise you. I never would have thought that Lamar Jackson would turn into the player that he is today. And I was a huge believer in Lamar Jackson. I was one of the few people in this planet who actually thought Lamar Jackson was going to end up becoming one of the best at his position. It's hard to teach the skill set that Lamar has. It's even more difficult to be as good as a passer as what Lamar is, coupled with his running ability. This is very rare territory that Lamar Jackson is in terms of being one of the greatest athletes in the history of the NFL. Lamar Jackson is up there with guys like Deion Sanders and Bo Jackson. In terms of just sheer athletic ability, there's not too many better players than Lamar Jackson. Nearly every game that the Ravens play, they got a shot to win because Lamar Jackson, in the majority of those games, he's the best player on the field. Playoff success and championships are a team accomplishment. It's not an individual accomplishment. You can't blame Lamar Jackson for Mark Andrews dropping that touchdown at the end of that game against the Buffalo Bills, or dropping that pass at the end of that game against the Buffalo Bills. That's not on him. You can't blame Lamar Jackson for all of the Ravens' shortcomings. I put his poor performance against the Kansas City Chiefs in the AFC Championship 2 years ago on him. But every time the Ravens come up short, we always put all the blame on Lamar when it's a team accomplishment. Rings are not an individual stat. It's a team stat. You don't win Super Bowls without having a great team, without having a great coach. That's why the Ravens were able to win the Super Bowl with Joe Flacco despite not having a stacked offense, because they had an overall great team. But with Lamar, if we just were to take Super Bowl rings and playoff success out of the equation, if we were just debating who are the most talented quarterbacks in NFL history, take rings, accolades out of the equation, Lamar Jackson, without a doubt, is number one, and it's not even close. We haven't seen somebody with this kind of running ability who also is having Aaron Rodgers' level of efficiency throwing the football, where he's putting up a 40-5 touchdown to interception ratio. Do you guys not know how insane that is? Lamar has had multiple games up to this point of his career with a perfect passer rating. This is pretty much a football god that we're watching at quarterback. And that's why, to me, in all of my 14 years watching the NFL, Lamar Jackson is pound for pound the most talented quarterback in NFL history. There's not a single quarterback that can do what Lamar Jackson can do, throwing the football with the level of efficiency he has, also with the ability to destroy you on the ground. This is truly a weapon. This is a football god disguised as a quarterback. And if he doesn't win a Super Bowl, he's going to be one of the greatest athletes, not one of the greatest football players, one of the greatest athletes to retire without a Super Bowl, to retire without a championship. He'll be in that Allen Iverson kind of conversation. Charles Barkley, John Stockton, Karl Malone. Now, I hope that doesn't happen to the young legend out of Pompano. But Lamar, I've seen his career from when he was a freshman at Louisville, when he had that hurdle against Syracuse that went viral, from him winning the Heisman Trophy to him being one of the youngest MVPs ever, to now becoming the most talented quarterback to ever play in the National Football League. At this point, we can't debate it. There are not too many quarterbacks that just even are on the same level as Lamar from an athletic standpoint and from a passing standpoint. Lamar is truly a unicorn, and he's one of one, and you can't underestimate or understate the greatness of LJ at this point. You can't. When people want to hate on Lamar Jackson, as a Steeler fan, I get offended. I almost became a Ravens fan when we passed on Lamar Jackson for Terrell Edmonds. I knew the kind of player that Lamar Jackson was going to become. I knew he was going to evolutionize the NFL. Now everybody wants to have somewhat of a Lamar Jackson. I don't think people are chasing the next Josh Allen. Josh Allen is a freak in his own right, but Lamar Jackson is in a way different weight class from a talent standpoint than what Josh Allen, Joe Burrow, and Patrick Mahomes are. There are things that Lamar can do that no other quarterback in the league can do. Winning Super Bowls is a team accomplishment. If you were to give Andy Reid Lamar Jackson, would Kansas City still not be in a Super Bowl conversation every single season? If you gave Lamar one of the greatest coaches in NFL history, he probably would have already had a Super Bowl by this point. It's not always a quarterback problem why some of these guys can't win at all. Sometimes it's a head coach problem. Sometimes it's a team problem. But if we're just able to look at Lamar Jackson from just pure talent, take accolades, rings out of the equations, there's not another quarterback that is better than Lamar Jackson from a talent standpoint. This is the most talented quarterback that's ever touched the football.